Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Data with me, your regular host, Scott Sammons, and I am very pleased to be joined by the wonderful James Robson on our episode today. Say hello, James.
Hello, James. Hello, Scott.
Good, you got that joke and that reference. Well done. The amount of people that go, what? Good, well done. That's an extra brownie point. You know what this episode is going to be like, can't you? We've set the tone now.
That's it. It's going downhill from here.
Pretty much, yeah. So in this session, we want to talk about, because James has got a very, very varied background, a bit like myself, we wanted to pull that apart, talk about the world, put it to rights a little bit, maybe have a little bit of a whinge about various bits and pieces. Not bad for what we're on now, whatever day of the week we are. I can't remember what the day of the week we are.
Monday.
Have a little bit of a whinge. Excellent. So, like most of us, I think it's fair to say most of us in the profession have had not conventional routes into the profession, whether we've fallen into it, whether we were doing some other role and then life just presented a redundancy or restructure or someone going, this is your job now. Most of us come into this profession with varied backgrounds and from various different angles, whereas yours, James, was even more of a weird angle in one form or another. Don't get me wrong, there's a full rainbow of it, but that was pretty unconventional. Starting with writing, was it Wales's first online drama series? What was that about?
Yeah, it was an internet drama series. It was called Pizza Man. And it's based on 2 weeks in the life of a Welsh Asian pizza delivery driver. So
Okay.
it was kind of, the underlying tone was about, the normality of diversity within, the capital of Wales. But then just these quirky 5-minute short films of this pizza delivery driver who is, I don't know, a little bit lackadaisical, ends up, in fact, getting his girlfriend pregnant, and then sort of ghosts her for a little bit because he's scared, and then you've got the door knocking in each of the episodes and some wacky happening there. So a little bit kind of fantastical, a touch. But yeah, so that was 2.5 years of my life, sort of beginning in 2008. And I mean, I'd been to film school in 2000 to 2003. So, did my traveling thing and then got into television production. I literally started as a runner in like 2006, 2007.
With all the fun jobs, yeah.
Yeah, and did the Gopher gig, and then became a researcher for Homes Under the Hammer of all programs. Did that for a couple of years, and it was during that I realised that the only way you get to do stuff yourself is by going out and doing it yourself and just not asking. So that's what Pizza Man came from. A friend of mine, many years back, I'd been a pizza delivery driver,
right?
And he said to me one day that this should probably be quite a fun little episodic drama. And many years later, it happens, and it was a time. It was also the time I realised that maybe I don't want to be a filmmaker, even though I'd held that dream for many years. When you do it, you go, maybe not for me.
Yeah. At least you can say you tried it. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. Wasn't for me.
Printed our own T-shirts, Pizza Man T-shirts for the show as well. Designed it, printed it.
I feel there needs to be a niche market for these now. They're going to be out there, and they've got to have a certain price to them now. Limited edition.
Limited edition. I think there's only 2 left, and they're both still in my cupboard. So, hey, who knows? If you want one,
I was half expecting you to say
coin or something.
I was half expecting you to say, oh, there's 2 left, and I'm pretty sure my parents have got them. Pride and place. So what sparked didn't fancy making videos, fair enough, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. What sparked the pivot into cybersecurity sales? Was it a random thing, or was there a plan?
Hey, Scott, I'll be honest with you, it's desperation. Um,
To be fair, I was the same.
yeah,
Desperation. I need a job. Any job, that'll do.
I needed a job, and for 6 months there, going many years back now, but for 6 months there, I was without a job, and one job I would not apply for was sales jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
I even retrained as a carer in the community down in Hounslow. I
Yeah.
lived in Hounslow, just finishing off Pizza Man and realizing that's not what I wanted to do. It just been released and things, and I was just looking for something to do.
Mm.
Applied for hundreds of roles, and we just had the financial crash of 2008. Everyone's licking their wounds by about
Mm.
2010. Still no jobs and things. But one thing I wouldn't go into was sales until I was, I'd retrained as a carer in the community. I was literally giving people personal care from door to door,
Mm.
earning less than minimum wage, which is a bit shocking to realise that still goes on.
Mm.
And just went, you know what, I'm going to start applying for sales jobs, and ended up just getting, I think they still do them, like apprentice style, 1 day
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
sales games to see how you fit in and whether or not you'd be any good at sales and things. I'm almost 30 at that point, and everyone in that room was like 21. So I'm feeling like major fish out of the water, but also with a bit of life experience going. I'm just going to walk this. So,
Yeah.
so I did, and then got a job as a telemarketer. Again, sort of 29 years old telemarketer, in the square mile, trying to flog. Actually, I'm not trying to flog stuff with doing that. You're trying to flog a meeting. You're trying to kind of use the gift of
Mm-hmm.
the gab to just get a meeting, and you get paid a bonus on the meeting. And again, being a bit older and quite desperate and hungry, just to earn a living. That was 18K a year with 6K bonus. Not much compared to where you can go in terms of data protection roles, but yeah, I hit their targets each month running, and then they said to me, "You're a bit older, and you probably could take on a leadership role. Do you want to set up this thing called the Sales Academy? We've got a plan for, and basically hire people into the role, train them into it, teach them the tech, teach them to sell, and then
Mm-hmm.
manage their targets and through CRM systems and X,
Okay.
Y, Z."
Well, yeah.
And so I sort of took to that and did quite well because I was a bit older, and then got headhunted a couple of times and increased my salary a number of times, and that's where that sort of led, yeah. And it was after I'd done a really good gig with Capita of all
Mm-hmm.
organisations.
Mm-hmm.
They'd purchased a small cybersecurity boutique at the time, and there was this who I felt was and still do feels quite an inspiring chap called Sean Huggett. He was running their cybersecurity team within Capita because they were getting into that
Mm-hmm.
market, and I was at the right time, moving on from another place, and he hired me as their sales academy manager. It was just me, and then I hired a team. I ended up building a team of about 12 people, split into two teams, kind of desk-based account management and things. And the reason why I bring that up, that was an amazing gig for me. It was like one of those ones I'd had many years of experience of doing that, and that was my swan song really in Capita. And it got to a point there, I was like, I'd done it, I was happy, and I was time to move on. I want to go and become an external facing salesman and actually, make some big money in tech sales and all that kind of jazz. And I moved to another small boutique, and I just wasn't getting on with it. And I'm like, this
Right.
is probably why I didn't like sales.
Yeah.
I liked what I was doing before. I was managing people, I was training people. I was like,
Yeah.
life and soul, keeping the motivation up in the room, because it's also a telesales role.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, telesales management. You need hyper energy. And then moving on to the sales role, I just wasn't happy. And in between that, my mate Sean, he goes and sets up another little cybersecurity boutique, but that's his own company, delivering ISO 27001. And we'd been chatting in between times. He said he was doing this, and he said, James, well, if you ever get bored of what you're doing, there's this thing called the GDPR that's coming along, and I think your skill set might be suited to be a consultant for for that thing, So just let me know if things go well or not. And things didn't go well. I gave him a call and moved over there, and that's where that all started. Yeah.
Ooh. And is it true around the same time you were also learning to be a yoga teacher?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
pretty much hand in hand. At the same time, I got into GDPR. I started. So here's a story. In fact, I think it might be my 36th birthday. I went to a trampoline park,
Oh, yeah.
and I came off badly, and I was I don't say airlifted to hospital. I wasn't airlifted. I was on a stretcher, just awkwardly
Straight
taken
to
out.
hospital.
So
Yeah.
a bit of a difference, into there. But I was stretchered out and spent a couple of days in hospital. And what I'd done is I'd kind of had a real bad knock. So I'd hurt whatever this area is, and I
Right.
lost the use of my left arm.
Mm.
Because I just couldn't move it without excruciating pain, and that kind of diminished a little bit. But it was just a
Yeah.
sort of like I'd lift the arm, and it was like, oh, it's so weak. It literally started to wither because I couldn't use it for weeks. And I was just starting this new data protection gig. I'm like, this is not good. Something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna kind of muscle through it and go to yoga. So I went to hot power yoga, and I couldn't lift. I couldn't put weight on it. So it was really strange trying to do a downward facing dog and all the positions. But to be fair to it, I was like, that is going to be my rehabilitation. That's going to be
Yeah.
my physiotherapy. They'd given me physio. You get 6 of those, and it didn't really work for me. It wasn't enough
Yeah.
and wasn't long enough. And the yoga was the physio, and I just got really, really into it. Hot power yoga, you can come out like feeling like $1 million, when you step out into the world after a good session. And I just got addicted to it, and then after 3 months of pretty much every day straight, I was like, no, I wouldn't mind doing no training. No, I wouldn't mind teaching this. This is quite fun. And I basically count that as three years of continuous training. I did my 200-hour teacher training, then followed by my 300-hour teacher training. So I'm a 500-hour qualified yoga teacher. I taught for 3 years in Lumi Power Yoga in Hammersmith, kind of between 32, 37 degrees, doing a journey into power, Baptiste yoga routines, and really got deeply in. Yeah.
Wow. So you're yogi through and through then.
Yeah, I earned my pips. I definitely feel like I earned my pips. Yeah.
Okay. And is the hot power one like I've seen, like for example here in Chelmsford we have the hot pod yoga where you do it in like a little like dry sauna environment. That's quite good. Is it similar to that, or is it a bit different?
I think it's just about exactly the same.
Right.
The atmosphere and the location. I think hot pod is kind of it was a concept that came out a few years after I'd started, but it's quite dark in what an inflatable tent that will then rain sweat on you whilst
Yeah.
whilst you're doing yoga. It is that. I'm not sure if they have a very specific style. I think they allow lots of different styles. Whereas the one I went to is known as Baptiste yoga, which is, you could call it a hot flow, yoga flow. With it's called Journey into Power. There's like sets of positions that you hit in a flowing, dynamic, moving class. So you learn that, and then you're allowed to go off piste. As long as you nail the routine, then they allow you to you can put your flair into it. So there's lots of similarities there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very similar. So I've sort of when I was having a look at that, it was this reminds me of, so alongside some of my data protection stuff, I've also qualified as a neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner, NLP. But not AI NLP, because the amount of people that see that and go, "Oh, you're an AI master practitioner." No, therapy. Thank you, not AI.
Yeah, natural language processing. Go.
Yeah. Rather than neuro-linguistic programming. But those sorts of skills, that ability to work with people, listen, genuinely park whatever's going on in your head and immerse yourself completely in someone else's issues, problems, whatever, to listen to and get to the root cause of what their problem is, I found incredibly useful. So there must be bits of your yogi training, experience, whatever else, do you find useful being a data protection officer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you learn to hold space and you learn to hold silence and you learn to be okay with that completely, even to the point where you probably know somebody else is a little bit, like, they need to fill that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it's really, really handy to be able to be completely comfortable and not awkward about it either. Because then people want to fill that gap. They want to tell you more. And then when you ask a question, it's like, okay, so we've had this breach. So what do you think happened? How did this? So it's non-judgmental, because that's fine. If you're okay in your own skin, then you're gonna convey that it's a safe space for people to talk to you and open up to you. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's handy, because lots of the conversations in data protection, especially when you're jumping into a situation where things are burning, and there may be fines flying about and ICO and yada yada and all that stuff. Um, they've got to trust you, and those conversations sometimes begin defensively, really defensively. They're like, I don't need to talk to you. I know what I'm doing. La, la, la. And you know that's going on, and so it's like, it's cool. I'm not worried about that stuff. Not here to point fingers. Just here to fix, report, log, stop breach. Number one, make sure people
Mm-hmm.
are okay. Make sure people are notified in the right way. Notify ICO. Notify data subjects if you have to. If you're still at high risk, and then if you've really got to do it, then you've got to send out the company-wide circular that goes external to tell people about it. And you've got to be okay with that, because that can get quite emotive quite quickly for a lot of people. Get that wrong as an individual being in data protection and guiding an organization through there. I'm sure that's tough, because you've got to have the courage to do it. Now, the yoga grounds you. And my journey through yoga, I don't do much now actually. My journey through yoga really ended up grounding me to be really okay with myself, and led me to meditation retreats and 10-day silent retreats and a number of those and things, and progressed me as a person to be able to handle the conversations that are difficult and easy and speak to everyone on exactly the same level. No judgment, not my position to judge anyone at any point about anything really. So yeah, that's so helpful. So helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back to when I first started, because I think I was on a very similar journey to you. I just needed a job. So I got the first job I could lay my hands on, an IG admin assistant role for Essex County Council. And I remember being a tad dramatic whenever we got a data breach notification come in, and being a county council with social care responsibilities, almost every other data breach involves some pretty horrific stuff.
Yeah.
So the ability now, yeah, fine, you will react in a particular way, but you are a little bit more calm and collected about it, as opposed to when I think back to those days. Oh my God, what is this? The world's going to end. Oh my God, we're going to do this. What have you done that for? Oh, yeah, useful skills to be able to just
Yeah.
park all that, listen to what someone's telling you, and deal with what's in front of you.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I think you and me have now been in data protection for so long. We've seen so much. It's not even necessarily that we need to kind of call on those skills to calm the voice in our own head whilst this stuff is going on, which may be going, oh my God, alarm, alarm, alarm. It's actually probably where, yeah, this is nothing compared to what we've dealt with in the past. Once you have a breach in a political party, and you've got to deal with all of that, then nothing quite compares.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
You and I were there for, well, quite a few of us were there for when GDPR came along, the famous four-letter acronym that's burned into our brains. Some of us were around when it was the Data Protection Act 1998 and the fun and excitement that was. And then when GDPR came in, it was all, the world's going to end. It's going to be a Mad Max society. We're all going to have to fight for petrol. Society's going to collapse.
It's Y2K all over again, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. The world as we know it is going to end. It's going to be awful. And I always remember that because it was a bank holiday Monday when it officially came in. So loads of organisations weren't back to work until the Tuesday. And I always remember that first thing Tuesday morning was just going, has the world ended? Have we got to, fight for petrol? Are we all fighting for any resources? Has the government collapsed? No, business as usual. Right, okay, fine. So where do we think, because we're a few years into it now, and the EU are talking about like the digital omnibus and simplifying the GDPR, and we all know what that means, but that's a separate issue. Do you think, given what you've seen and given the experiences that you've had, and like me, you work with different organisations, do you think we're any further along in the protection of personal data, or has the last few years been a lovely adventure and a lovely story to tell the grandkids, but nothing's really changed?
No, I think change was inevitable because of the amount of publicity that GDPR has had. However much we sort of scorn any practitioner these days that says, fines, you will be fined 20 million euros, 79 million quid, that's probably useful, that message early on, to really give people a kick to go like now take it seriously. Have things changed? Yeah, even the phrases like data is the new oil, or data is the new money, all those kinds of things really have, I think, proliferated into society. So people do have an idea that there is a value to their own personal information, and you can't easily get away from it now. So, maybe I'm getting off topic away from, has the GDPR changed things over the past 10 years? Of course, it's 8 years since it was enforceable, but yeah, it has, but it doesn't feel like it's been resolved or solved anything, and there's still lots of gaps. There's a lot of things that are better, and organizations are still worried of not necessarily the fines, but of individuals with enough money to take them through the courts and probably prove something that they've done wrong, and then they may get some sort of tarnish on their reputation. I think that message is really out there, and I think that's probably a good message to still be out there, because why not have a name and shame around a problem within an organization? And so if there is that fear, then what are the questions organizations are asking themselves? And I think generally they do. Are we compliant before even are we making sure we're looking after the people whose data we are processing? If you're in social care, for example, as of course then there's a high risk around the loss of that data, because it could cause actual harm to someone. And I think there is kind of an ethical mindset around personal data that is now a byproduct of the compliance, because people do hate being spammed. People dislike it when they think they're on the telephone preference service and someone's given them a call, and you may get someone giving somebody an earful for giving them a call and threatening to go to regulators. Not that regulators will do that much unless there's thousands of calls that have been proliferated, but having that fear out there, I think it is a product of GDPR. Has it solved things? Well, no, but I think it's made it a lot better. And I remember many years ago, I didn't realize I'd be saying this kind of. I think I wrote this almost 10 years ago, but the phrase from the film Tenet really resonated for me, which is nobody celebrates the bombs that don't go off. And I think there's a lot of bombs that probably haven't gone off in data terms, because they've just been resolved, or you've had a practitioner jump in and go like, yeah, no, don't do that one. That's not going over there into some sort of unsecured, unstructured drive because it makes your company's life easier for a consultant to jump onto that data that's easily accessible via an internet link. It's like, no, don't do that. So I think it probably has cut off the openness of data and the lack of, even a two-factor authentication. Put a password on the Excel document before you share it with anyone. Do you have to attach it? Can you do it from a link within a SharePoint, for example, or Google? All those kinds of things. It's just like little normal things that now become normal. It's normality to work like that and not share the data in a way that could expose the data. And yeah, I think it has helped. I think it has stopped a lot of the bombs going off, but there's still a lot of them still going off, I think.
Yeah, and we've done an episode on this, and it's definitely something I want to talk more about with anyone and everyone, is that we are, in our profession, whether it's data protection, IG, records management, whatever, we are not good at shouting about, to your point, the bombs that don't go off, the successes. Yeah. The fact that, look, we've done this, it's avoided this, this works, this was a good use of our time, it achieved this, this, and this. We tend to report on and monitor all the negative, the risky stuff, the SAR timings, the breaches, all this other good stuff. But we don't shout about, on that exact point, well, actually, we did this, which meant that didn't go off. That was a good use of time, good use of money. That was a good investment.
Yeah.
We don't shout about it. We don't talk about it.
Yeah. It's a real shame because there's still lots of systems out there where, you probably could reduce your data footprint by sharing a set of data that is from a single source. And wouldn't it be great if that single source was, self-sovereign identity wallet of sorts, where you as an individual hold the control over your data and then you allow access or not for those organizations from a single location. I mean, you've got carbon footprint implications there, which is good. You've got, you don't need the amount of storage or management of data centers, storage locations by people, and so we're moving forward in that direction. I went to the Solid Symposium a couple of weeks ago, which is the Tim Berners-Lee initiative. So the founder of the Internet initiative around building what they call pods of data, where you hold your entire life's worth of data in a digital location that then you decide whether or not you share that data via an API to any system that's accessing or wants access to that data. So you get that kind of control, and that's fascinating, and that's really trying to push forward this underpinning change of how data is used, not necessarily to innovate on anything new, but just change the underlying infrastructure to something that's a bit more secure, a bit more controlled, a bit more, sovereign to yourself, really. There's a lot of kind of, the word sovereign is now popping up everywhere for me. Sovereign ID, self-sovereign ID, sovereign AI, sovereign data, all those kinds of things. Yeah, that's become a massive theme as well. But I think I've forgotten the question, so I'm going to pass it straight back to you.
Well, it's about that. It's about that data point. And on that exact point, actually, one of the big projects that I know you worked in, and many of us have done over the years, especially when big data and moving to the cloud was a big project, and that was everything everyone talked about for a while. Because I remember all the conferences were all about cloud and all about big data, and then they moved on to something else. Then they moved on to something else. Then they moved on to something else, and now we're on to AI. But some of those, to your point, those big data projects, or even just those data migration projects, they're still going on. They're still present big challenges. They're still presenting big issues. Many organizations are grappling with, to your point, either data localization, data sovereignty, or harmonization, or streamlining, or whatever. It's a problem that hasn't gone away. It's still going on. So what did you learn when you were involved in that project and when you did all that work and that big challenge? What were your reflections? What top tips would you give people that are coming at it today? Some of them fresh, some of them have dealt with it before. What sort of hints would you, or tips would you give them?
It's a good question. It's also a tough question because I'd say no two big data move projects are the same. But from my own experience, which was with SHL, so the largest global psychometric testing firm, they were moving from 4 in-house data centers. They owned their own infrastructure, owned their own kit, and they were moving to AWS and to 4 locations, 4 AWS locations, and making them self-sovereign. I think it was like China, Russia, EU, and US.
All the fun
So
places.
yeah. So what are tips there? There was a lot to cover. The DPIA that we did for that migration, even though maybe you don't necessarily need to do so, it was more to make sure there was a checklist of if you do have to maybe drop this data out, clean it, and then transform it so it fits in the new infrastructure, because they also used it to be able to make it more user friendly, usable for the company. They did a whole kind of cleanliness package on that data. But they were pulling out to other locations to do that transformation work before then pushing it to AWS. But whilst also continuing to run the business, which relied enormously heavily on that data, because psychometric tests, you're pushing the test out, you're grabbing the data back, and it's going into the same data center locations where all this other data is being kept and replicated. So the fact there was an enormous replication of data because it had to be that way to be able to function. Not only have you got the redundancy within the original system, and I think they had 2 redundancies for that for each of their physical locations.
Right. Okay,
You then
yeah.
got a plan for the copy of that data for the cleanliness, and 2 copies of that data to make sure lose one, work on the other, and then are you pushing it to the right AWS location? And there's a duplication there as well. So I think know where your duplicates of data are and when they're going to be deleted. So it's very much a retention built into the process. So when they kind of then copied again, so if you think about, in the normal location, you've got 3, in the physical location, you've got 3 sets of data. In the transformational location, you've got 2 further sets of data. And then before they got rid of anything or deleted anything, they had a further 2 copies of that data as well, and then had to do a real-time duplication from the point of capture to both the internal infrastructure and the cloud-based infrastructure, pushing out and so duplicating again. Know your data mapping and know data flow. And I think, some people kind of get confused maybe between a ROPA, record of processing activities, and what a data map is. A ROPA can be a data map. I'm not going to say it can't, but it's far easier to visualize that and use a Visio or whatever to go like that. It goes from here to here to here to here. No matter how crude that is, just to know where the forks in the road are, and then keeping an eye. And you may even be the only person keeping an eye on that, because techies will move on. They're like, yeah, great, replicated, gone. And it just sits there for a period of time. And could even, I'd say watch out for this. The top tip is watch out for techies just moving on to a new shiny thing when the data is still held in this other location and will only ever be deleted when the contract runs out, and then there's 90 days after that. Whereas really, that's now a risk, because nobody's managing that. They don't care about that. They've done their work. You may need to go, let's whack-a-mole that one and get rid of it at the right time frame. So I think that there's a lot of that around it. It's a lot of people management. You have to be good with people. You just can't not be. And I don't know what other tips are in there. I can't really think of too many others than that. Know what's going on and be plugged in. Try and get support as well and buy in from the top. it's the age-old cliches. I'm almost like saying it with a bit of a get buy-in from the top, make sure you got because 10 years in, you're like that. It's still the same things,
Yep.
and although they may be like the cliche, they're still the top tips. Get your buy-in, get your resource, and make sure you have the ability to know where your data is, what the data is, when to delete that data. Are you telling people about how what you're doing with their data? And then do you need to update the external notification, like the privacy notice? Maybe there needs to be a processing agreement in place between all of these vendors that you are moving your data around through and from. Even the bridge organizations like a Zapier or something that is the jump off to the next point. Watch out for that, because there's these intermediaries that the techies like to just throw in there to do something else with that data. That means the data's going to throw up to another location, replicate, do something, push it back. So all the cliches are the tips, really. And don't think it's too complicated, because it's not. Break it down to the fundamentals.
Yeah, keep things simple. Keeps life simple. I'd agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we can't not talk about your role as DPO in the Labour Party. So most DPOs you come across will have experience working in either a commercial setting, a fundraising setting, a public sector setting. And you'll see the vast majority of guidance, discussion, blah, 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 very much in those sorts of focuses. But what's it like being a DPO in a political setting? Because that's a very different beast.
Yeah, it really is. And there wasn't much out there to go on. I mean, once I knew I'd gotten the gig, I started to really read up on the Cambridge Analytica scandal and the ICO report on that, and then the ICO had also done a review of political party data protection and data processing. They called it Democracy Disrupted. Maybe that was the Cambridge Analytica one, but they had two around about the same sort of time, 2016, 17. And so that was handy to read, but there was not much more than that. So I was coming in almost like scrabbling around a touch to go, well, what does the law say around political data? And there's no pointers, really. Not many people knew. And I walked in there and they hadn't had a DPO for 2 years, and that were still suffering from a breach that they'd had in 2021. So I get in there kind of mid 23.
Yeah.
I felt a question coming on.
I remember that. I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I get in there at kind of mid 2023, and there's not much to go on. Everything that had been done by previous DPO had atrophied. Didn't really mean much anymore. No policies that I could rely on, because the only policies that had been created were almost thrown together because of the ICO audit. And the only reason why the ICO audited all the political parties around about that time, which was sort of GDPR time as well, was to make sure that at least the political parties would be, have some modicum of readiness for GDPR and kind of lead from the front. And so they just made up like 20 policies. And so I'm looking at them going, this doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't have the right information in there, because even the legislation wasn't that clear. So, the Data Protection Act 2018 is actually quite helpful for democratic engagement purposes, as the processing activities that sit under public task, public interest for the use of political data by a political party. And then there's elected representatives can sit on that as well. But there wasn't a clear, this is what it is, this is how it all works. There was nothing. And I even leaned on the other parties' kind of policies and information. And even that, as I dug more in, I'm like, this doesn't say the right things. So I almost feel like I'm calling out, counterparts that had the same problem. And I just realized that, we need to put our heads together. So I reached out to the Lib Dems the Conservative Party, Plaid Cymru, and the Scottish National Party, and pulled together a forum of the what we ended up calling the cross-party data protection group, and we came together once a month. After 6 months of being in there, going, I need to have somebody else to bounce off, because it can't just be me relying on this stuff. And the ICO are, non-committal when you say, is it this, or can I be really clear? So that was quite tough to get my head round. And I didn't go in guns blazing, change the world, change the data. I went in going, I think there's a fire going on, and I've got to tackle that. And there was a data subject access request fire to put out. And as I'm kind of, the embers are still kind of smouldering a bit, I'm like, okay, now I really need to understand how personal data, the legislation for personal data within political parties, a bit better than I do. And then started to change things, and then started to kind of change the ship. But it was uniquely, it's a unique experience, because you're really in this intersection of, public task, and it's a private entity, and it's not even registered as an entity. It's a registered association. I forget what the specific term of how you register a political party with Companies House, but it's something like an unregistered association.
Yes, it's not a not-for-profit. It's not a charity.
It's really weird. Yeah. It was definitely a unique experience, and it's relentless. That was the thing I found. Absolutely relentless, because once I fix the upper layers, then I go to the lower decks and fix this, rewrite privacy notices, build from scratch a rights request process, completely gutted that, finished, but as I'm getting rid of one problem, the next one is coming up. There might be a breach in Solihull or Glasgow, or I'm being asked to review the privacy notice of the Mayor of London. And then I'm asked to go to the leader of the opposition's office to review their privacy notice. So I got into Keir's office, fairly early on to do that. And the privileges there were they're amazing. They're something I'll always look back on and go wow, that was brilliant. Going to the Houses of Parliament and having tours around there and meetings with people around data protection. Getting very close to the ICO, because the ICO were all over the Labour Party for most of the time that I was there, because they were investigating that 2021 breach. There was a reprimand after the general election for not answering data subject access requests or deletion requests in the right period of time, which I had to clean out. So what was hilarious is as soon as that reprimand notice came out, and we'd been working on this for the whole year or so before it came, the amount of organisations then reached out and went, do you need some help with your DSARs? Do you need some help? A year ago, think about it. We got reprimanded now. And
never miss an opportunity. Never miss an opportunity.
Yeah, don't miss an opportunity. They've got a problem. We had the problem. And one of the things that the ICO were quite respectful of in the reprimand was that they were worried that if they pointed towards a new DPO came in that started working on it, that it might point blame towards me for this problem. I'm like, absolutely not. Make sure you got the new DPO going in there, because I solved this shit. I got them out the quagmire and turned the ship, and I made sure I was known on that. My name's not on there, but DPO at the time is mentioned, and they were worried it was exposing me as an individual. I'm like, I'm not going to worry about that at all. But yeah, there's so many things. I mean, I could take up a whole other podcast for you, Scott, and just tell you incredible and mind-bending at the same time.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially being in that sort of very niche area. You're dealing with all the same problems that we all deal with in one form or another: privacy notices, breaches, new projects, all that other good stuff, while also navigating a world that's got very little resources, very little specific guidance, and very niche. It's very similar when I was in captive finance. It's a very niche thing. So
Yeah,
trying to make it fit, you just have to work collaboratively. There's no two ways about it.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And for an organisation where their main goal, especially before the election, is just get the whole place ready for being the best choice to vote for. That's it. And
Mm,
how do you win a vote? And data protection didn't really fall into that bucket because it's an expense. Yes, but they legally have to have one because they hit the threshold. But they didn't see the return on investment if the return didn't give them votes
yeah.
in any type of election. And so it's very difficult to get any more resource out of them for anything. And ended up, I was managing on spreadsheets for most of the time. It was only kind of in the lead up to, we thought the election was going to be in November, and by about end of April, I managed to get some money to put in a data protection software and system, and then the general election was called, and so I couldn't do it. I just had to then manage everything to do with the election, which is a whole other story. You play
Mm.
whack-a-mole with the amounts of things they want to do with data to try and help them get more votes and things. And then even during the election, as a bit of a side note, we got hit by a weaponized DSAR attack from kind of the democratic activism organizations that set up web pages for easy submission of DSARs and erasure requests 30 days from polling day. So it was the 4th of June that was set up, and then we started getting hit by data subject access requests. It was literally 202 hours, 2002 days.
Wow.
And that was it. There was not much more I could do in any other capacity that somebody wasn't screaming at me for. I just had to manage all the DSARs. Yeah.
Joy. And I know we're talking about, especially at the moment, there's lots of discussion around weaponization of DSARs, which I suspect we will talk about at some point, definitely. So now I think the label you've put on yourself is a data sharing specialist. What sparked that? Because that's a juicy area, just in of itself. But what sparked that?
Yeah, but before Labour, I worked for an organisation called What Works for Children's Social Care. That's a research organisation funded by central government to do research in what works over here. Let's replicate it over here
Mm-hmm.
and try and work out whether or not it does have any tangible change. Like one of the projects I mentioned is there's a project called Social Workers in Schools. Does that improve academic attainment for SEND and disruptive children or disrupted children? Does that have any effect on academic achievement and better their lives? So in that organisation, they gave me a gig to how do we put their research data, raw research data, into the Office for National Statistics for
Ah.
further use and further research.
Mm.
And I was reluctant at first to take the gig, and then realised I'd be interacting with the ONS and other government departments. I'm like, I've never done that before, so why not? Let's take a look. Not sure it's a DPO's job, and then fell in love with it, and realised there needs to be a whole ecosystem of all this data being reused for societal benefit and for good. But it's just not. And a lot of it, although it's used and has a great report, and maybe someone somewhere can go, oh, can I get hold of this raw data from the individuals that collected it? That's all you kind of get. You don't get this wholesale. We got the data. Let's make it available for further use. And that's where I came up with the idea for my company. My company is called Datum Longevitus, like longevity of data. You get access to it, reuse it, catalog the use and catalog types of data, and almost the same sort of things that the ONS do with the big government data sets. They just don't have a conduit pipe for the academic data going from the institutions into a bigger centralized location. And I found there are organizations that do that kind of stuff. You've got kind of the Sale Data Bank in Wales. You've got UK Biobank, which we've heard a lot about because of the recent data breach. But there's a number of these institutions. But again, there's not an easy flow of data into them. They're plugged into kind of only a lot of very big data sets from very established organizations, and that's sort of all it is. And you can't easily connect those two data sets from those two locations. You have to spin up a trusted research environment or a secure digital environment, yada yada. And I'm like, there's a gap there. There's a massive gap, and that's what I want to fill. I want to be a trusted data intermediary, but doing a data protection wrap. Because the more I got into it, the more I realized that the excuse for not doing it was GDPR. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I want to jump in there and go, I'll just solve all of that for you, and then you can get access to your data far quicker. And my goal is to reduce the friction, reduce the time to access, and take that headache away from the researchers that spend 50, 60% of their time just trying to get access to the data and fill in data protection documentation and things. Take that away. Isn't that great to get that rest of the 60% they get back to just focus on the research? And that's where my passion sparked up. And I realized towards the end of last year that, you know what, I've got to scratch that itch again. And because I had set up my company before I got the Labour gig. Then I got the Labour gig, kind of made my company dormant for a couple of years because I couldn't say no to, taking on DPO at Labour at all, especially at the time that it was. But that's the data sharing thing with me. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I remember, because when I went back to Essex, so I left, went off, did other things, captive finance, working with GPs, and then went back to Essex, and we were doing a lot of data sharing stuff. There was a really good organisation called it was a not-for-profit called the Centre of Excellence for Information Sharing. They lost its funding a few years ago, which is a real shame because they did some really good stuff on your point about removing barriers, sharing best practice, something that works really well over here can be replicated over here. And they did some really good stuff. And it was fascinating work, really fascinating work. Working with them at Essex, we were one of the first big authorities to set up like a big data sharing framework, to your point, to remove some of the barriers. Because I think especially public sector DPOs, we spend a lot of our time arguing over the minutiae that don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And yet we do. Hours and hours and hours lost arguing over whose form we were going to use. Oh, I don't care, just fill the damn thing in. So removing some of that is massively worthwhile. That way then you can get into the real proper discussions and the issues as opposed to some of the bureaucratic stuff that we could easily resolve. Totally. I mean, one of the initiatives that I wanted to run with, but didn't have capacity to do so before I was in Labour was, there's a need to share kind of social care data for research from all of the local authorities and have an ecosystem with local authorities and local providers and the community care sharing hubs and different organizations that look after people, look after children, and that's a stockpile of information that could be transformative to those people in their lives. And wouldn't that be amazing if you had a kind of a countrywide, a national data sharing initiative where it just kind of maybe it doesn't even need to dump into a massive data lake. It can be federated
under the right protections with the right technology. So you don't need to know necessarily whose data it is. You're just getting the richness of that data to be able to do research on it, and you just get that feed from all local councils. I mean, it could be completely transformative. But we're just not in that world yet. We're not in that headspace, and I think it's also a tough call for the general public to
Mm.
understand and be okay with. We don't have the social license for such a thing, but it almost has to be the way we go, because how do we develop? As a species, as humanity, we need huge amounts of more data sharing, and use the technologies like AI to do the analysis of this data, but without exposing it and without breaching kind of data protection rules, but making sure it's also ethical, and it's gone through an ethics committee, and also the right data protection protocols are in place, but infrastructure governance as a rule, rather than just paperwork. Because sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, arguing over the paperwork doesn't mean anything if you've got the underlying infrastructure right. It's like, you know what, call yourself a processor or a controller. I'm not worried about that. I'll log it as wrong, but but you're doing everything else right, so that's paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hours of our lives lost to that. Those discussions, absolutely hours. Ugh. And on the subject of AI, because I said we'd come back to AI, because everyone's talking about AI for one reason or another. And it does present some opportunities, definitely. It presents some unique challenges, definitely. But one thing I wanted to get your opinion on was, so as an example, AI glasses. They're back. If you'll remember the Google Glass that
I do.
was, bless its little short-lived life. They're now back because they're funky. You can even get them in Ray-Bans now. They're stylish. They're hip. And I think that was the hook to get people onto it. The old Google glasses looked horrible, and they were never going to be a fashionate icon.
It's sort of
Or
like the
fashion
Borg,
successful.
weren't they, from Star
Yeah,
Trek, with the
yeah,
glass
exactly.
panel, like.
Yeah. Or the, what was it in the Deep Space Nine, the little Dominion thing where they had the little headset on and the
Yeah,
little, like,
that's it.
that's what it was. So no one was ever going to buy it, let's be honest. Whereas now that they're fashionable, and now they can be hidden in a pair of glasses like this, they're becoming mainstream. You can get them on Amazon for less than 30 quid. They're mad. But it does present, yes, some unique challenges, because of some of the things that Meta are saying they're going to start turning on in the future, and it does present some unique problems. But for practitioners, everyday practitioners, so if you're a DPO for a medium-sized business in the Midlands somewhere, that isn't necessarily doing much with AI, but now you've got staff going into sales meetings, into employee one-to-ones, in whatever, wearing these glasses that are capturing and recording everything. Well, that problem that we had with Google Glass has just re-emerged and is now potentially even worse. So are we seeing, it's almost like a paradoxical history is repeating itself. Are we seeing history just repeating itself with a new technology? But it's the same problem.
Yeah, I think we are. I think that's right, but it's also exponentially worse than
Mm.
the original, because Google Glasses didn't have the back end infrastructure that the Meta Ray Bans do, and did they have the storage capacity? Yes, probably they're Google, but not the functionality that now exists and new technologies that now exist to run those things. But yeah, we're in a world of tinfoil hat, cover my face, or have other glasses that actually have a infrared something, so it ends up blurring your face. We're going to go through all of that stuff. I think boards and people bringing those things into meetings will have to get to a point where no, you can't, or there has to be some sort of lockdown on those things. I don't know. Yes, it's cyclical. Yes, it's going
Mm.
to get difficult. I worry about behavioural change
Mm.
as a species. I said that a few times. It sounds so grandiose and big, but behavioural change in the idea that what if kind of in the playground kids are playing, but then there's one friend with one of those glasses, and they know that they may get TikToked or bullied or thrown on social media because of doing something silly. And they then decide that when they go out, they're going to constrain themselves and not be themselves, and you end up having a whole mindset where we're reducing the ability to have a personality and to develop yourself because you're worried about being embarrassed by something that somebody's recorded from a pair of glasses. That's saddening to me, really.
Mm.
Um, and then what if there is an open access for the police for suspected. We end up getting into pre-crime and minority report scenarios quite quickly with those things. Like he reached for something, it was going to happen. It's like, well, is that false positive, false negative, or what's the provability? And I think we're going to get into a real problem with those things. Am I happy about being recorded if somebody has got one of those and I see the little camera? It's like, no, I am gonna kind of curate what I say and be concerned that maybe if I say something wrong or I'm just myself and I'm making a joke that can be misinterpreted on purpose. Yeah, that's not good. What's happened to free speech? Whereas the makers of those things would probably say, well, no, this develops free speech because everyone can see anything and say anything and do anything. It's like, well, no, I think it actually curbs the freedom of people making any sort of speech or verbalization that they think will be used against them. I saw the film Mercy the other day. Have you seen that
Oh
one?
yeah.
That's an interesting concept around it. But I mean, how scary is that to have access to all data, all video feeds in real time to conduct an investigation and a search and then you go to, well, what if that ends up in some extreme right or extreme left wing agenda for some political purpose? Well, we're in a world of pain then.
Yep.
If that technology is developed, and let's be honest, quantum will probably break all of that and allow for access to all of that. Not just for political parties, but for your threat actors that are trying to harm you, and then your script kiddies that are just trying to make fun of you. So we are going to get to a very strange place, and how we manage this legally. Legislation has to catch up. And I was speaking on another podcast that almost it needs to be, and maybe the ICO is getting there. And I'll get onto what I mean. There needs to be a new technology comes out, legislation catches up within a month. He's like, let's kind of go through what they call it in tech, a sprint run, legal sprint run. Let's level it up, and then design a protocol that you can tap into that those organizations are not allowed to then do this thing that they've this new legislation. So legislation is no longer just paperwork, it's actually code. So you've got legislation and code and go like, okay, we've got to tap that. And this is what it's saying to our technologies, is how we're allowed to work and how we're not allowed to work. But it's sped up. A month is too quick, but very, very quickly. And I wonder if that's on the agenda of the ICO, because they're building a new sandbox, which is to test potentially uses of personal data that are illegal, but within a very controlled environment, and they're overseeing it. Now, it may be illegal in legislative terms, but there's a nuance in there and a new technology that goes, well, it is illegal, but it's very helpful and is not bad, doesn't cause harm. Why is it illegal anymore? And then move the bar forward for that kind of legislation. So there really has to be some sort of marrying of technology and legislation that can be kind of push the button, and then there's the alert goes out to not only the DPOs but the technologists as well to go, now you need to hit this bar, but here's the code for you to try and hit it. Otherwise, if we don't do that kind of stuff, we're going to get to dystopia quite quickly, and this concerning situation. If we're not already there, I have to throw that at you, because facial recognition systems are worrying and scary already,
And
uh,
everywhere,
and
absolutely
everywhere,
everywhere.
and everywhere, being misused and possibly abused already, and we don't have control of that. And now the facial recognition is on everybody's, camera, Meta glasses, Google glasses, whatever. And how is that making judgments of you? So maybe the Mercy film example is a good example of how bad it could get, because that's dangerous technology now. We're getting to like Big Brother on steroids, not just Big Brother is watching you. It's like everyone is watching you.
I remember, I think it was 2010, there was a local news story that became a national news story because a council had put trackers on its bins because people were stealing them. And that caused a national outcry. Council spies on residents through bins, blah, 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 blah. And we then got a wave of FOI requests and subject
Yeah,
access requests and whatever else, mainly from the more motivated citizens. But it was for, I want my bin data, I know you're spying on me. And it was you joking, mate? We can't even afford biscuits. There's no bleeding way that we're putting trackers in your bins. That ain't going to happen. And now trackers, cameras, all sorts of different things, to your point, are everywhere. And sometimes you don't even know that it's there.
yeah,
I worked with a client on a project just under a year ago where their CCTV cameras, the provider of them, because it was a digital service, turned on facial recognition, didn't tell them. It wasn't a customer choice,
wow.
it was just turned on. So it was what's this? Oh, yeah, we got a random email about that. Apparently they've turned on facial. What? What? Got enough problems with the business not telling me these things. Now the supplier's not telling me these things. Great. What an
Yeah,
exciting time to live in, really is.
yeah. We're on the cusp of this, and we're on the we're in the front row. We are the first people dealing with this. We're the first wave of practitioners going like, okay, this new thing. It's almost the ongoing joke of, if you are Gen X, or what they're naming a Zennial, which is the mix between like the crossover between Gen X and Millennial, but you grew up analog and it all became digital.
Yeah,
We're there again.
yeah.
We're now in that a similar space, and we're seeing it. We're on the front line, me, you, and all the data protection practitioners, because AI is coming our way, or if not already come our way.
Mm.
Nobody's really paying for AI officers. They're paying for more digital systems to monitor AI without the people ready to actually manage them. Therefore, it's coming towards data protection because it seems a natural fit.
Yeah.
Um, and we're the ones writing the rules and the legislation around it, because we're now motivated enough and understand it well enough to push back on ICO guidance, regulatory guidance, EDPS, EDPB, all this kind of stuff, because we're the ones on the front line going, no, that just does not work, do this. And that, I think that's what spawned the digital omnibus in some ways. Yes, maybe more from the commercialization of data, and those individuals going, make it easy for us, no more, not so much red tape, please, we don't want that.
Yeah.
And then when you get down to nitty gritty of it, they've already kind of repealed a couple of those things that they're going to introduce anyway, because it just doesn't work, because the data protection officers are pushing back again. So we've got this again. GDPR, data protection is the blocker, or GDPR is the enabler, and you just need to know how to use it properly. You've got that conflict going on, and you've got all this new technology that's trying to make everything more efficient. And dare I say, are we the ones going, yes, but do it in the right way?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can use it. And two, doesn't it add friction? Isn't a lot of this AI stuff? But nobody's really saying it. It's adding friction. I'm not getting to things I got to as quickly as I did, because I've got to go through a Copilot link, or a Gemini link, or a ChatGPT thing to thing. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want that now. I want to just go straight to the thing and do
Yeah.
the thing. And so I think there's a lot of friction, a lot of problems with that friction going on right now as well. And we're the ones seeing it and managing it and trying to understand it and pushing back. And yeah, So we're the evangelists now, and we should take that seriously.
Well, a little seriously.
Very clever.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But on that exact point, because I'm conscious of time, but on that exact point, everything that so I do a lot of work with apprentices, I do a lot of work with training the future generations. Because to your point, they're going to be the ones that are going to deal with the next wave of things. They're going to be ones that are going to inherit whatever we leave behind. So I always ask people, and I know it's a bit of to your point, we've covered off quite a few cliches today. So let's add another one in for the sake of it. What advice would you give someone coming into the profession or just starting out in the profession? What's the top tip that you'd give them, that little nugget that you'd share, that thing that almost there's something that someone would have told you when you first started?
That's a good question. Don't think people know more than you about their own data.
Ooh, I like that.
And think of it logistically. There is a point of capture. It does go somewhere. It may go somewhere else. Then there's a point of release.
There's no such thing as the data fairy. Stuff happens.
Exactly.
I like that. Yeah.
The cloud is not fluffy white things in the sky. You know, it's still physical.
Yep.
And if people start to complicate it, which they will, rest on the fact that you understand the legislation for that. I mean, maybe that's fairly bad, but what would I have liked to have known? It's tough because I felt like I did it on the cliff face. Like really, I did it the hard way. Just being thrown in the deep end within my first couple of weeks of even knowing the legislation. I was in a client delivering training and given a 3-day gap analysis, and I barely knew what I was doing. So smart people don't necessarily understand the legislation. Do not look up to them if they're not a data protection practitioner. I think that's probably a nugget, because it's probably very easy to go, CTO knows everything. Chief Information Security Officer, they know exactly how it works. Look up to them, listen to them. Like, no, actually, they've got an agenda, and you will go down that rabbit hole. Be dispassionate, but also be very, very clear on the facts. What are the fact patterns? Understand what fact patterns are. That's a nice one, because I only learned that a number of years in. Know the fact patterns and rest on that. What the facts of how that data is used and why and where. And that's it. There's nothing more complicated about it than that. And so many people just overcomplicate so much.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Then go down rabbit holes and listen to, we've talked about this on the podcast before, sometimes listen to the imposter into the head, which does then send us down they're a CISO. They must know what they're talking about, or they're this, or they're that. They must know what they're talking about. Their argument, the counter argument they're making against me sounds really logical. Therefore, they must be right, and I'm wrong. Actually, no, trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, James. It's greatly appreciated. It's been really fascinating talking with you. Good luck with what you're planning to do, where you go. I hope to see you at an event in the future, definitely.
Sure you will.
Well, hey. And I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity for a pub chat at some point coming up, whether it's privacy space or something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. That's the end of this session for today. So make sure you like, comment, if you've got any thoughts, anything you want to know more of, down below on the various platforms, share with your colleagues, all that other good stuff. That's everything for this episode of The Rest is Data. Thank you and goodbye. Say goodbye, James.
Goodbye, James.
Hey! Thanks all. Catch you later.